Employees of Disney, what is the craziest thing you've seen happen in the park? Probably a little late, but I was working in the kitchen at Cinderella's castle when this family of 4 came in for their dinner. About halfway through the dinner, the husband politely stands up and taps his glass for attention. He announced that his wife of 15 years has been cheating on him for over a year. The entire place stood still in shock. He motioned for his kids, paid the waitress, and left the wife crying at the table. A co-worker of mine at Disney World once helped escort Michael Jackson through some employee-only areas to avoid the crowd surrounding him. He got an autograph on a napkin. I worked ODV outdoor vending. One night I witnessed Tinkerbell get stuck on her wire above the castle during the fireworks show in 05. She almost got burned up by those fireballs during the Indiana Jones portion of the show. They eventually turned off the spotlight on her, and she just hung there until they were able to reel her in back to the Matterhorn. Lol. Also I say she because the Tinkerbell that flies is played by both male and female actors. That, and seeing Alice on her cell phone cussing out her boyfriend while smoking a cig at the in-between was pretty friggin' hilarious. Used to work attractions at an unnamed land. On the Indiana Jones adventure there are 3 48-foot height checkpoints which small guests must hit, and there's often drama here. One of the lowest points in my Disney career was having to height check a midget. I couldn't make eye contact. All he said was, "Really?" and I hung my head in shame and nodded. Another time an African American family had made it all the way down to the last checkpoint, which was in the station. The poor kid was too short, but the mom lost her mind when I said her child couldn't ride. She started screaming at the top of her lungs that this racist Methodica won't let my precious baby girl on the ride. You are racist etc, etc. Cleared out the station, temporarily shut down the ride. She was escorted out and banned from the park. TL. Doctor, height checked a midget, didn't let a little girl ride because she was black. Late to the party, but I was a safari driver at the Kilimanjaro safari attraction in Animal Kingdom. We had this elephant named Willy. Willy was an exhibitionist. I was driving a safari one day, spewing out facts about elephants, when I hear a tiny voice from the back of TG truck yell, "M-O-O-O-O-M. He has 5 legs." I turn, and sure enough, there's Willy, standing with his 5-foot-long neck just swaying in the Florida breeze. I had to turn my mic off. I was laughing so hard. TL. Dr. Elephant Penis. Former cast member in Disney World. I picked up a shift at Frontierland Foods. I was warned beforehand that in the kitchen there was a lot of animosity between the Spanish and Haitian cast members. So midway through my shift there's a lot of yelling back and forth between the two groups, and it culminates with one of the older Haitian dudes taking a cooking sheet, not one of those flimsy aluminum foil ones, the actual metal ones, and bashed him over the head with it hard as hell. Needless to say, that was the last time I picked up a shift anywhere. I worked in Tomorrowland attractions at WDW and there were many stories, but one of the craziest was when I noticed a Down syndrome child waiting in the back hallway, not a normal place for guests. I figured he was waiting on his party to finish riding. I was bumped out of my position for a break 5 to 10 minutes later, and he was still there. I got him to walk down to the unload area with me, figuring his family was probably freaking out about where he was. No one was down there waiting for him. I waited for 15 minutes and realized his family was not on the ride. After calling managers and coordinators conducting a search throughout Tomorrowland, we found his family riding Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin. They just left him at space. I have never been so upset at work. There are so many others, but this one always comes to mind. As my name implies, I work at WDW as a cast member. There are a lot of crazy things I'd rather not get into, but the worst was one night during the fireworks exit. We had a bunch of 20-year-olds being dumbasses on the resort platform. They start punching each other in the arms, being the usual pricks to each other. One of them ended up missing his friend and cold clocking a 12-year-old girl. 12-year-old girl's dad had to be 6'4" and 320 pounds. And built. I mean really built. It took 4 security guards and 2 Orange County deputies to pull the guy off the bloody pulp that remained of the kid. His friend ended up jumping into the bushes to get away from one seriously angry father. Edit. Removed centimeters acronym for cast member. My mother worked there in the 80s and used to run the booth where you can get your name sewn into the back of Mickey Mouse ear hats. Well, she remembers one day getting the request for a New Day and Corset hat. Turns out Saddam's two sons were visiting the park and wanted a pair of ears. Not real crazy but fairly interesting. My favorite story is when a woman was dressed as Snow White in the parks, belligerently drunk and pretending to be the character by signing autographs and taking pictures with people. She was escorted out by the PD and caused a huge scene and resisted arrest. There's a photo hung up backstage in one of the parks of it. People swaddling handles of vodka like newborns and stowing them in the undercarriage of their strollers to smuggle them into Magic Kingdom. I was in the middle of a brewing international feud between a group of Brazilians and a group of Argentinians, you could tell by their tour company shirts. Standing in the middle of the crowd screaming back and forth and shoving each other. I was just merchandise at the time, so all I could do was keep innocent guests out of the way of the fight. Had another fight break out between two American families. A fat woman in an electric scooter ran over a child's foot. The child was shrieking bloody murder, so loud that I heard it from over 50 feet away over the sound of the show going on, atmosphere sounds, and the regular din of guests. The families were screaming obscenities at each other, and one father was getting in the face of the other father and started to poke his chest and used wild hand motions that basically told everyone looking on that it was about to go down. I've been shoved by a guest at a character meet and greet because they had to wait for 10 extra minutes. I told her there was no way possible for me to expedite the line and the 10-minute gap was necessary. The gap was mandatory for the level of heat we had, and we were required by law to have the gap for safety reasons. So she shoved me and told me to make it happen. I've had a group of Brazilian girls try to fight me because they were being rough with the characters and I demanded they stop. These were characters that couldn't really defend themselves. A guy rubbed his nipple and asked if he could strike a deal with me so his kids could meet a character after I had closed the line. No means no, even if you're rubbing your nipples. Never really a dull moment. Grad night 2007. I was walking out of the Space Mountain break room and saw one of my guy friends at the then Honey I Shrunk the Audience look like he was about to vomit, and one of my girlfriends who was laughing hysterically. Apparently in the dark of the theater, some girl decided this would be a good time to go down on her boyfriend. Little did she know, about halfway into the show, one of the effects is this little tube that comes wiggling out of the seat to simulate mice running by your legs. This hit her throat, she bit down, and he was bleeding pretty profusely. A grad night to remember. Other crazy Space Mountain stories usually involved stupid people jumping in / out of moving cars / the track. The two I remember the most. 1. This guy was separated from his wife getting into the first row because he wasn't paying attention and the gates closed. Space Mountain has a very delicate time system, and generally we don't have enough time to reopen gates. I was trying to shout across the track and tell him that we would pull his wife out so they could be rejoined, but I guess the centimeters checking lap bars asked and she said she didn't mind and didn't want to be pulled out. So he solves this problem. Was he too scared to ride alone? Just a dick. I will always wonder. By jumping into the track like an asshole to chase after her car when the gates opened. My first time that I ever had to hit the emergency stop. 2. A rather tall man was sitting in the back row and looked really uncomfortable. I asked him if he was sure he wanted to ride as his legs were smashed against the seat in front of him, and he assured me that he did. Next thing I know, I turn around to see him climbing down one of the flights of stairs leading up into the attraction. This asshole decided he wanted to get out, and because he was so tall, the lap bar didn't go down so far as to lock him in the ride. It just boggles my mind that he decided to climb out in a pitch black area where he has no idea where any stairways / walkways are, and just take his chances that he won't fall into a track and be crushed by a ride vehicle. When I worked on Space Mountain circa 2003, Tom Cruise came on Space Mountain with his then girlfriend Penelope Cruz and her family. His group gets on the ride, they go have fun, and they come back to the station. As is standard procedure, we asked if they wanted to stay in the car and ride again. This is so they don't have to get out, just to immediately reboard. Star privilege. We dispatch the car, and as it starts to move forward, Penelope S non-English speaking family starts flipping out. Apparently they didn't want to go again, so they stand up. This causes us to press the button to stop the cars in the station only. Alarms start going off as the ride is about to break down. If we don't start moving them, the alarms start flipping out the escorts. Everyone but the people who work the ride are flipping out, beeping, yelling, good times. Anyway, we release the station stop. I have to manually tug the car to the next spot in the station via the passenger handlebar in the front. This is when my hand came in contact with Tom Cruise S. I never washed it again. Edit. Tom Cruise died. They actually just got off in the little side room. Nothing interesting. For more interesting stuff, here is my AMA from a while back. http reddit.com/r/comments/agl28/ I'm from a Disneyland employee how walked most/ not a cast member, but once while looking around a shop at WDW Florida, a couple of guys came in and directed everyone to the next attached shop. As I was angry at being at Disney World and generally angry at life, I didn't move, so the guy just stood nearby. I looked over to the door and Michael Jackson complete with mask and a kid wearing a Spider-Man mask walked in. I busied myself looking at the stuff and walked over to the next shop. I also was wandering around one day away from my family looking for a place to smoke and saw Don Knotts sitting at a table behind a velvet robe. I walked over to the rope and said, "Hi." This was around 2003 or so, and I was amazed at how old he looked. He was extremely nice and asked me my name and we chatted for a bit until a reporter and came in and walked over to interview him. Security walked over and Don Knotts told them I was his friend, Ed, and I was cool. I told him I better go and let him do his interview. Thanked him and left. Extremely sweet guy. I once saw a guy getting a blowjob in the Golden Horseshoe at Disneyland. There's a pair of couches at the top of the stairs and the second floor is usually empty after the show's finish for the day. Well, I walked up there just to check on the place and noticed a girl had her head on a guy's lap and it was covered by a blanket. There was movement. Now I knew what was going on, but I acted like I didn't and said, "Oh no, is she feeling alright? Do you need me to call first aid?" The look on his face was priceless as he muttered something about her just being tired. They left shortly after. I used to be a cast member at the Disney store in my local mall. We were required to greet everyone within 10 seconds of them entering the store. There used to be a game online that kids would play about getting to the back of the store, grabbing a stuffed animal from the plush mountain, and get back up front before getting greeted. I saw this one teenager run across the store and dive headfirst in the mountain of stuffed animals, only to quickly find out that they were on risers. He was taken away on a stretcher, but ended up being fine. And yes, I greeted him while he was in midair, so he lost the game.